going on, YouTube? Thank you once again for clicking on my thumbnail as I give you the tips about moving to DC, Maryland, or Virginia, otherwise known as the DMV. So I want to keep this video real simple. So we'll break it down into two different sections, the things I do like and the things I don't like. We'll do 5 apiece. And then, I'll cap the video off with some tips on where to live in the area, and then I'll give it an overall grade. We'll call that a Rob's rating. Sounds good? Great. But before we get started, I just need one favor from you all. Just go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. It will be greatly appreciated to have your support. Without further ado, let's get started right after this.
Let's go.
Okay, now that we're back, let's start off with the bad things. This is in no particular order, but these are things that I do not love about the area. Number 1, I'll lump this all together. So I'll say it's the traffic, the roads, and the drivers. So look, I feel like it's a hidden rule in this area to not allow people over into your lane as you merge on the highways. It is really ridiculous, like how some people just do not want to share the roads. And the thing is, driving around this area is complicated from like the traffic flow and how everything moves. So it's already complicated, and then the drivers, they don't make it much easier. Now, in certain areas, the potholes can be pretty bad, but if you're moving from up north, it's honestly probably nothing. Number 2, the weather. Now look, in my opinion, it stays cold long here. Now you're probably watching from Boston. This is nothing compared to that, honestly. But if you're watching from the southern states, you're in for a rude awakening. I love warm weather, although I'm originally from Philly, but I've spent a good amount of my life in the South, and I love warm weather, and to me it stays cold pretty long. It should not be 55-degree highs in May. I don't like that, but it's subjective, so you might love the seasons, and if you love the seasons, this is a perfect place for you to be. Number 3, it's the high prices. Now look, it don't matter where you go in the DMV area. You could be outside of DC. It's pretty pricey. It all depends again on where you're coming from. If you're in California, New York, Boston, yeah. But if you're coming from a smaller area or even coming from Miami, some southern big cities, it's gonna be a pretty big price jump. Now the salaries probably are gonna jump with it, so it's it offsets a little bit, but I'm saying $20 drinks, restaurants are more expensive, gas, rent, groceries, everything is a little bit more expensive in this area. But look, hey, stick around, maybe the pros will outweigh the cons. Number 4 is it's where the government is. And by saying that, it sometimes can cause a headache. Look, if there's any political events going on, like a debate or anything like that, DC is a mess. There's roads blocked off left and right. It takes hours to get 10 minutes up the road if you're driving. Even on the metros, it's pretty packed. It is crazy whenever something's going on. And just with the government sitting here, look, I am a paranoid person. I'm just being honest. So if someone was to attack, I would think they would attack the DC area first. Now look, I try not to live my life in fear, so maybe I shouldn't worry too much about that. But if you're like me, always looking over your shoulder, a little worried, I don't know about this area. But just being where the government sits, it brings a bunch of extra madness that sometimes is difficult to deal with. Last but not least is the density. Now, it don't matter where you are in this DMV area, it feels like it's packed. There is traffic. I don't feel like it's the worst traffic I've ever sat in, but there's pretty bad traffic. When you're in the grocery stores, it seems like it's pretty busy and you're dodging people left and right with your cart. Honestly, just everywhere you go, whether it's going out with the nightlife or just going to a restaurant, feeling like you always need a reservation or the restaurant is gonna be full. It is always packed, not to mention the parking garages and stuff. It feels like there are a ton of people in this area because it is. I believe it's the 9th or 10th most populous metro. I might be wrong. It might actually be 6. So I'll put that on the screen just to confirm. But the density, sometimes it can be a headache. If you're coming from a smaller area, I can understand if this might not be for you, but you'll be surprised at how close you can be to a rural area while also sitting in a major populated metro. Now with that, we're gonna switch over to the pros. So pro number 1, is the public transportation is fantastic. Look, the DC Metro, it actually has the second largest metro rail system in the United States, so it's pretty expansive. And then on top of that, the buses, as well as the bike lanes and the streetcars, they are pretty nice to have. Comparatively speaking, it's going to be better than everywhere outside of New York City as far as public transportation. So I do love the fact that you have options if you don't want to drive. And then not to mention, it is really clean. So the public transportation, it feels like the city is doing a great job, or the area in total is doing a great job with keeping the public services pretty clean. Number 2, I would say, is the food. Oh my goodness, man, I'm telling y'all, I just got so hyped because the food here is delicious. I mean, there are so many different types of foods, from brunches that are better than any type of breakfast you've probably ever ate, to, you know, just upscale dining in different types of restaurants. There is something, and surprisingly enough, the bar food is really, really good. Each bar I went to, I'm actually surprised. I'm thinking, hey, maybe I should just come here and get my food. But nonetheless, the food in this area is top tier. I've traveled around the United States, and honestly, I feel like the DC area probably falls in the top 3 as far as best areas with food. Number 3 is the diversity. Now look, there isn't anywhere you could step without seeing someone that looks a little bit different from you, from a different culture, from a different country. It is really interesting to me to learn about backgrounds and different cultures. So when I see it, when I'm embraced in it, I absolutely love it. And not to mention, you know, immigration brings different types of thoughts, different types of restaurants, different types of nightlife. So if you're looking for a place that's pretty diverse, where you can become even more well-rounded, where you can talk to everyone in every walk of life, this is the area you probably should come to get that. Number 4 is the scenery. And when I say the scenery, oh my goodness, y'all, this area is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. I will put it maybe behind San Diego, but there's no beach here. And honestly, there are mountains, there's so much water surrounded by you. Just the setup of the buildings when you're traveling to DC and you see like the different types of buildings and how everything is developed. It is so beautiful. I honestly surprised more people don't consider moving to the DMV area. And for the people who have come and said they don't like it, it's most likely because they didn't see everything. You kind of have to travel a little bit outside of DC proper and go to every single one of these little neighborhoods that I'll mention in the next pro. But pretty much, this area is extremely beautiful. Honestly, I put it top 2 in the United States as far as just different things to see that just appeals your eyes. Even if it is the monuments, you might take those as a small thing, but walking to the Capitol at night is like so beautiful. Trust me, this area, it looks really good. And last but not least, number 5 is the distance to other major metros as well as the inner cities. Now look, I mentioned before, you could take an 1.5-hour flight to Toronto. You could drive 8 hours to Toronto. New York's 3.5-hour drive. Philly, 2.5-hour drive. Pittsburgh, only a 5-hour drive. And if it's a flight, it's most likely gonna be maybe a quarter of that time. So that's great in itself, but the DMV has a ton of small cities that are extremely developed and a lot better than a lot of, you know, mid-sized cities spread out throughout the United States. For instance, I think of DC as the downtown area of the DMV, but all the little cities around it, such as cities that you might not ever heard of, like Alexandria, Silver Spring, Chevy Chase, Bethesda, Falls Church, Arlington, they all have their own downtowns and their own type of vibe. So one night you can go out to one of the downtowns in Arlington and go out to eat and have a ton of fun. The next weekend you can go explore the other downtown part of Arlington or Alexandria or Falls Church, or you could just go to one of the bustling neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. There's so much things to do, and each city is so developed that you really don't have to leave it at all. But you can just explore and like really love each city for what it has to offer. Now that pretty much wraps it up with the pros and cons, but really it's just some of the things that I love, some of the things that I absolutely hate, but it's all subjective. So some of those things you might not even mind at all. But as far as where to live, if you've already made your mind up and you're thinking about where to live, it really depends on exactly what you're into. So let's say if you're into the nightlife, if you feel like you want to have drinks often or you want to go out to eat often, I recommend living in the DC proper. If you want a slower paced lifestyle, maybe still populated city, but you don't want it to be as bustling as a downtown area of a city, I would recommend living in the areas around DC. Now, if you want a more rural area, a slower area, but still very close to DC, I'm thinking Reston, I'm thinking, Lorton or maybe Waldorf. Or even Baltimore. Those are further out and they'll be a little bit cheaper. Now, as far as safety, now if you take a look at this map right here, it shows you exactly where is more safe to live. And I mean, the map is saying Virginia is a little bit more safe. Now, don't get me wrong, that does not mean that you are automatically going to become a victim of crime if you live in DC or Maryland. But I mean, data does not lie, and it is more likely that it happens there than in the Northern Virginia area. Now, as far as a overall grade of the area, honestly, I will give this place a A. Not an A minus, not an A plus, just a A. And if we want to do on a scale of 10, I would give it a 9. But in all honesty, this area is absolutely amazing. The only other place I could see myself living if I had unlimited money would be, LA or San Diego. But outside of this area, it is fantastic. I can't give enough great reviews. I didn't even mention the nightlife and how amazing that is. A lot of the things here you can't find in other places. And I know everything that you can find in other places you can find here. This area gets a solid A for me, and I absolutely recommend moving here if you were thinking about it. But look, that pretty much wraps up my video. Please do me a favor and like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment if you have any questions for me, and I will do my best to get back to you. Well, with that being said, I'm signing out. Peace.